Britney Haynes says she knows she couldn't have won the Traitors Season 3, whether she was a traitor, which she was, or a faithful through and through. Asterisk asterisk major spoilers for the entire third season of the Traitors US asterisk asterisk. Episode 10 of the popular Peacock series ended on a major cliffhanger for Britney, who was tasked with sending her fellow traitor and friend, Danielle Reyes, home or risk her own chance at winning. Faced with a difficult decision, she voted to banish Danielle from the game. A Big Brother Reindeer Games repeat of sorts. Just one day after her Traitors Season 3 bestie recruited her to join the dark side. For Britney, the game might as well have been over the moment she stepped into the dungeon in Episode 9. A silent assassin, as there was no clear path to victory for her from that point on. Her only alternative was to reject Danielle's proposal, which would have ended in her murder. From there, things just went downhill. As you can see, it was a lose-lose situation. I was cooked, and not only was I cooked, I was like the house leper, Britney said during a sit-down interview with Decider. Nobody wanted any association with me, which is human nature. It happens on Big Brother, too. When somebody is marked for dead, you distance yourself. Not only because you know you're going to vote against them and it might be emotionally difficult for you, but also because you don't want their stink on you. And the stink on Britney was just a little too intense. After sending Danielle packing in the first moments of Episode 11, the day of reckoning is upon us. It was clear that the remaining faithfuls in the castle, Dolores Catania, Dylan Efron, Lord Ivar Mountbatten, and Gabby Wendy, trusted each other way more than they could ever trust her. In truth, they had no major reasons aside from her friendship with Danielle to suspect her as a traitor, but that was enough to vote to banish her at the final roundtable. From there, the 4 remaining players went onto the final circle of truth and voted to end the game, believing each player in their midst to be a faithful. Luckily for the group, had Britney been taken to the final circle and the game been called, she would have walked away with the entire prize pot. In the end, Dolores, Dylan, Ivar, and Gabby split the roughly $200,000 prize and became the official winners of the Traitors Season 3. Britney says she never stood a chance. That whole last day for me was a torture, pure torture. I knew I had no one. I knew that I was like marooned at sea, she told Decider. Mentally, that day was just, it sucked. Check out Decider's full interview with Britney below. DCIDR. I'm so excited to talk about your brief time as a traitor. I feel like you've been sitting on it forever and have probably been dreading it. Britney Haynes. I know, it was so painful because I knew the whole time what was coming. And I'm having to watch these episodes like Shake's Head. Was it a horror show? I feel like it must have been a horror show to watch. It is a horror show. I don't even want to complain because I made the bed. But the constant just defense of myself is never ending. Constantly having to explain myself away. And honestly, it gets so exhausting. But I get it. I made the bed. If you do something that is indefensible, then you must try to defend yourself. I understand, but I've known this was coming for so long, and so here we are. The time is upon us. But I do feel like you are kind of in a unique situation because every other person, they could kind of find another avenue of how they might have stayed around. But you had no other options. It was a dead end every single way. I was cooked, and not only was I cooked, I was like the house leper. Nobody wanted any association with me, which is human nature. It happens on Big Brother, too. When somebody is marked for dead, you distance yourself. Not only because you know you're going to vote against them, and it might be emotionally difficult for you, but also because you don't want their stink on you. You know what I mean? You don't want to be guilty by association. So that whole last day for me was torture, pure torture. I knew I had no one. I knew that I was like marooned at sea, and I was still going to have to try to create this argument and try to have this grand roundtable when I basically knew I was cut. Mentally, that day was just, it sucked. I even had more against him than what you saw. And I think that part of the reason it wasn't on there is because they wanted to focus on what the viewer saw. I had this evidence that he was in the bookcase that night of the coffin murders, and he self-admittedly was in the bookcase that night. I, on the other hand, was nowhere near the bookcase. I was in the kitchen with Robin Dixon and Chriselle Stas. I was nowhere near the bookcase. So, I had even more than what you saw. I thought I had a really, really solid argument against him. But to me, Dylan knew that Danielle would have recruited someone. And so knowing that it wasn't him, he knew that it was me. And Sophie was able to counter back some of my argument. But the association with Danielle was really all it came down to. And truthfully, that's all he had because I was a faithful for 90% of the game. I was a faithful for so long that it was trying to call a faithful a traitor. Basically, I was a baby traitor. I became one yesterday. But I felt like my argument against him was super good and really compelling. And I cannot believe that not even one person threw red over my argument. Not even one. It's insane. I think that highlights some of the challenges of a game like this. Boston Rob, Mariano, told me it's the hardest game he's ever played because of how many people you're trying to manage. Do you feel that way too? Yeah, but to me, the hard part is not management. That was a traitor thing for Boston Rob. For me, it's behavior prediction. You constantly have to predict how this outcome will affect the future. Like, if I do this, how will they react? Will they do this? You're constantly trying to predict someone's behavior, and it's really hard to do. I'm self-professed not great at it. I can think a million ways, for sure, and so much of this game, or at least my game, was contingent on behavior prediction. I find that really, really tough. And as a faithful, you are so powerless. I mean, you might as well just sit back and wait on your turn to be called in for your murder letter. You're one voice out of many, and you have absolutely no power. I had no hand in choosing who was at that final banishment table with me. That was Danielle's banishment table, right? Those were the people that she chose to make it to the end. I had no part in choosing all those people. Dylan would not have been at my banishment table if I had any say in it. But seeing the chaos of the Traitors episode to episode, was there any part of you that wished you had been recruited earlier, or would you rather have been left out of it? I wanted to be a traitor, from day one. I was gutted to have been a faithful from the beginning. Here's the thing about this game, generally speaking, if you randomly chose any other group of traitors, it's a different outcome. It's different winners. It's different if a traitor wins, if a faithful wins, everything hinges on who is in that turret. So this outcome only existed because that specific group of people who were in that turret. There is no faithful who's such a strategic faithful that they're going to win no matter who's there. It doesn't exist. The people in the turret take along whoever is advantageous to them, and that answer is different for each person. So if I would have been in the turret just generally cleaving someone else, then it would have been a different outcome. I would have elected to make other decisions than that group of traitors did. So who would have been at your final roundtable if you were in control? If you were the lead traitor from the start? If I was the lead traitor, I said from day one I would have kept the housewives around at least longer. At least to the point that they turned on me, and then I probably would have gotten rid of them. But I would have kept the housewives around for sure, because they were a very big shield. I would have gotten rid of all the smart people first. All the smartest people would have had to die early in the beginning. If anybody's figuring stuff out, that's an enemy to me. You gotta go. I want nobody who can figure out anything is who I want left. I find it difficult to critique someone else's strategy because everybody is doing what they think is in their own self-interest, the best thing for their game. I think that she played really, really over the top, and that is eventually what led to her demise. And people being onto her was her being so over the top. That being said, if she had played a completely different game, who knows, maybe she wouldn't have made it as far as she did. You can't predict that. If nothing else, she was really amusing to watch. It was really fun to watch. I mean, I was cracking up that whole day, knowing that the scene was going to show her convulsing on the floor. And I was likening it to Shelby in Steel Magnolias, having that seizure, that diabetic seizure, and being like, drink the juice, Shelby.